Okay, where the red fern grows. Let's see where we are. We're in the middle of chapter 7. Chapter 7. We'll be out of this in a few minutes, I said, and then you'll be all right. I came plowing out of the matted mess and was right on the trap before I realized it. I was met by a loud squall. I was so surprised I dropped the pups. There he was, my first coon. He was humped up on the sycamore log, growling and showing his teeth. He kept jerking his front paw, which was jammed deep in the hole I'd bored. He was trapped by his own curiosity. I couldn't move, and I felt like my wind had been cut off. I kept hearing a noise, but couldn't make out what it was. The movement of the boy pup shook me from my trance. The unidentified sound was his bawling. He was trying to climb up on the log and get to the coon. I yelled at him and darted in to get hold of his collar. On seeing my movement, the coon let out another squall. It scared me half to death. I froze in my tracks and started yelling again at my pup. The girl pup worked around behind the coon and climbed up on the log. I screamed at her. She paid no attention to me. Digging his sharp little claws in the bark, the boy pup made it to the top. He didn't hesitate. Straight down that sycamore log he charged. With teeth bared, the coon waited. When my pup was about 2 feet from him, he made a lunge. The coon just seemed to pull my pup up under his stomach and went to work with tooth and claw. The girl pup saved him. Like a cat in a corn crib, she sneaked in from behind and sank her needle-sharp teeth in the coon's back. It was too much fun for old Ringy. He turned the boy pup loose, turned around, and slapped her clear off the log. She came running to me, yelping her head off. I grabbed her up in my arms and looked for the boy pup. When the coon had turned him loose, he too had fallen off the log. He was trying to get back to the coon. I darted in and grabbed him by the hind leg. With a pup under each arm and running as fast as I could, I lit out for the house. Coming out of the bottoms into a fresh plowed field, I set my pups down so I could get a little more speed. I started yelling as soon as I came inside of the house. Mama came flying out with my sisters right behind her. Papa was out by the barn harnessing his team. Mama yelled something to him about a snake. He dropped the harness, jumped over the rail fence, and in a long lope started for me. Mama reached me first. She grabbed me and shouted, "Where did it bite you?" "Bite me?" I said. "Why, Mama, I'm not bit. I've got him, Mama. I've got him." "Got what?" Mama asked. "A big coon," I said. "Biggest one in the river bottoms. He's this big, Mama." I made a circle with my arms as big as a 20-gallon keg. Mama just groaned way down deep and covered her face with her hands. Some big tears squeezed out between her fingers. Almost in a whisper, I heard her say, "Thank God. I thought you were snake bit." My sister, seeing Mama crying, puckered up and started bawling. "He needs a whipping," the oldest one said. "That's what he needs, scaring Mama that way." Something busted loose inside me, and I cried a little too. "I didn't want to scare Mama," I sniffed. "I just wanted everyone to know I caught a coon." Up until this time, Papa hadn't said a word. He just stood looking on. "Here now," he said. "Let's have none of this crying." He didn't mean to scare anyone. Taking his handkerchief from his pocket, he stepped over to Mama, put his arm around her, and started drying her eyes. Mama poked her head around him and glared at me. "Billy Coleman," she shouted. Billy Coleman. Did we know his name? "If you ever scare me like that again, I'll take a switch and wear you to a frazzle." This hurt my feelings. I really did get tuned up. "Everyone's mad at me," I said, "and I haven't done anything but catch the biggest coon on the river." Mama came over. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to be cross, but you did scare me. I thought a rattlesnake had bitten you." "Now that that's all settled," Papa said, "we had better go get that coon." Looking at Mama, he said, "Why don't you and the girls go with us? I don't think it'll take long." Mama looked at me, smiled, and turned to the girls. "Would you like to go?" she asked. Their only answer was a lot of squealing and jumping up and down. On the way, Mama noticed some blood on my shirt. She stopped me and started looking me over. Where'd that come from?" she asked. "Did that coon bite you?" "No, Mama," I said. "I didn't get close enough for him to bite me." With a worried look on her face, she jerked out my shirt. "You don't seem to be scratched anywhere," she said. "Maybe this is where it came from," Papa said. He reached down and picked up my boy pup. His little black nose was split wide open and was bleeding. I saw a relieved look come over Mama's face. Looking at me, she started shaking her head. I don't know, she said. I just don't know. Did that coon get a hold of this pup? Papa asked. He sure did, Papa, I said. But it wasn't the coon's fault. If it hadn't been for little Ann, he'd have been eaten up. I told him how my dogs had tied into the coon. Papa laughed as he fondled my pup. This dog is going to be a coon hound, he said, and I mean a good one. The coon started squalling as soon as we came in sight. My goodness, Mama said. You wouldn't think anything so small would be so vicious. Papa picked up a club. Now everybody stand back out of the way, he said. This won't take long. My pups were wanting to get to the coon so badly that they were hard to hold. I had to squeeze them up tight to keep them from jumping right out of my arms. My sisters, with eyes as big as blue marbles, got behind Mama and peeked around her. Papa whacked the coon a good one across the head. He let out a loud squall, growled, and showed his teeth. He tried hard to get to Papa, but the trap held him. The girls buried their faces in Mama's dress and started bawling. Mama turned her back on the fight. I heard her say, I wish we hadn't come. Poor thing. Papa whacked him again, and it was all over. It was too much for Mama and the girls. They left. I heard the tail cane rattling as they ran for the house. I heard the tall cane rattling. Ah! After the coon was killed, I walked over. Papa was trying to get the coon's paw from the trap. He couldn't do it. Taking a pair of pliers from his pocket, he said, It's a good thing I had these along, or we would have had to cut his foot off. After Papa had pulled the nails, he lifted the coon's paw from the hole. There, clamped firmly in it, was the bright piece of tin. In a low voice, Papa said, Well, I'll be darned. All he had to do was open it up and he was free, but he wouldn't do it. Your grandfather was right. A sorrowful look came over Papa's face as he ran his fingers through the soft yellow hair. Billy, he said, I want you to take a hammer and pull the nails from every one of those traps. It's summertime now, and their fur isn't any good. Besides, I don't think this is very sportsmanlike. The coon doesn't have a chance. It's all right this time. You needed this one, but from now on, I want you to catch them with your dogs. That way they have a 50-50 chance. I will, Papa, I said. That's what I intended to do. While we were skinning the coon, Papa asked me when I was going to start training my dogs. I don't know, I said. Do you think they're too young? No, I don't think so, he said. I've heard that the younger they are, the better it is. Well, in that case, I said, I'll start tomorrow. With the help of my older sister, we started giving my pups their first lessons. She would hold their collars while I made trails with the hide for them to follow. I'd climb trees that leaned out over the water, jump out into the water, swim to the other side, make trails up and down the bank. With a long pole and wire, I'd drag the hide on top of rail fences, swing it through the air, let it touch the ground 20 or 30 feet away. I did everything with that hide a coon would do, and probably a lot of things a coon couldn't do. It was a beautiful sight to see my pups work those trails. First they were awkward and didn't know what to do, but they would never quit trying. Old Dan would get so eager and excited he would overrun a trail where it twisted or turned. He would run straight on, bawling up a storm. Didn't take him long to realize that a smart old coon didn't always run in a straight line. Little Ann never overran a trail. She would wiggle and twist, cry and whine, and pretty soon she would figure it out. At first they were afraid of water. I never would admit it, even to myself. I always said that they just didn't like to get wet. They would follow the trail to the stream and stop. Sitting down on their rears, they would cry and beg for help. With a pup under each arm, I'd wade out into the stream and set them down in the cool water. 9 times out of 10, one pup would swim away and the other would just go the opposite way. I had a time with this part of their training, but my persistence had no bounds. It wasn't long until they loved the water. Old Dan would jump as far out as he could and practically knock the river dry. Little Ann would ease herself in and swim like a muskrat for the opposite shore. I taught my dogs every trick I knew and any new ones I heard about. I taught them how to split up on a riverbank to search for the hidden trail because it was impossible to tell where a coon would come out of the water. Sometimes he might swim downstream and other times he might swim upstream. Maybe he would come back to the bank he had just left, or he would cross over to the other side. Perhaps he would stop in the middle of the stream on an old drift. Sometimes he would come out of the water by catching the dangling limbs of a leaning birch and climbing up, never touching the bank. Or he could come out on the same trail he used to go in and backtrack. He would sometimes crawl up under mined bank or into an old muskrat den. One of the favorite tricks of a smart old ringtail is the tree barking trick. This he accomplished by running far up on the side of a tree and using his stout legs for leverage, springing 20 or 30 feet away before touching the ground. Dumb hounds trail up to the tree and start bawling tree. I taught my dogs to circle for a good 100 yards to be sure he was still in the tree before bawling. In order to learn more about coon hunting, I'd hang around my grandfather's store and listen to the stories told by the coon hunters. Some of the tales I heard were long and tall, but I believed them all. I could always tell when Grandpa was kidding me by the twinkle in his eyes. He would tell me how a coon could climb right up the fog and disappear in the stars. How he could leap on a horse's back and run him over your dogs. I didn't care, for I loved to hear the tall tales. Anything that had a coon hair in it, I believed completely. All through the summer and into the late fall, the training went on. Although I was worn down to a frazzle, I was a happy boy. I figured I was ready for the ringtails. Late one evening, tired and exhausted, I sat down by a big sycamore, called my dogs to me. "It's all over," I said. "There'll be no more lessons. I've worked hard and I've done my best. From now on, it's all up to you. Hunting season is just a few days away, and I'm going to let you rest, for I want you to be in good shape the night it opens." It was wonderful indeed how I could have heart-to-heart talks with my dogs, and they always seemed to understand. Each question I asked was answered in their own doggish way. Although they couldn't talk in my terms, they had a language of their own that was easy to understand. Sometimes I would see the answer in their eyes, and again it would be in the friendly wagging of their tails. Other times I could hear the answer in a low whine, or feel it in the soft caress of a warm licking tongue. In some way, they would always answer. And that's the end of chapter 7.